I still remember the exact moment my life started feeling like it wasn't mine anymore. I was just looking for my spare charging cable in her car. Nothing dramatic. Nothing suspicious. Just a normal, stupid errand on a Tuesday afternoon. That's when I saw it. Stuff shoved under the passenger seat. Not hers. Not even close. A cheap watch that I'd never seen before. A second phone charger that didn't match any device we owned. And something that made my stomach drop before I even understood why. A hotel key card with handwriting on the back that wasn't hers. At first I laughed. Actually laughed. Like my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe a coworker left it. Maybe she was holding it for someone. Maybe I was overthinking like I always did when I got anxious. But even while I was making excuses in my head, my hands were shaking. I didn't tell her that night. I just sat in the driveway longer than I should have, staring at her car like it had suddenly become a stranger parked in front of my home. We looked like one of those couples people quietly envy. Not perfect but stable. Predictable in a good way. We had routines, shared jokes, a rhythm that made life feel safe. I used to think that was enough. We met in a way that felt almost scripted. Mutual friends, late nights, long conversations that stretched until morning. She was attentive in a way that made me feel chosen, like I had finally been selected out of some invisible line of people waiting for love. In the beginning, I ignored the small things that didn't quite fit. The sudden, work emergencies, that didn't match her schedule. The phone always face down. The way she guarded her messages like they were medical records instead of conversations. But I told myself that trust meant not questioning. That jealousy was something insecure people did, and I didn't want to be that person. So I trained myself to relax. To accept explanations too quickly. To believe her without verifying anything. Looking back, I think I wasn't trusting her. I was just avoiding the fear of what doubt might uncover. The signs didn't come all at once. They dripped in slowly, like something leaking behind a wall you refuse to open. She started being more protective of her phone. Not aggressively, just subtly. Turning it away when I walked in. Taking it to the bathroom, even for short showers. Things that are easy to dismiss individually, but impossible to unsee once they stack up. Her moods shifted too. Some days she was warm, affectionate, almost clingy. Other days she felt distant, like she was physically present but mentally somewhere else entirely. I remember asking her once, jokingly, if she had a secret second life. She laughed too quickly. A beat too loud. Then changed the subject. I convinced myself I was just tired. Work stress. Overthinking. All the usual excuses people use when they don't want to face reality. The worst part is I wasn't even unhappy. That's what made it harder to suspect anything. Why destroy something that still felt good? So I didn't dig. I just observed. Quietly. Passively. Like a man watching a story he refuses to believe is about him. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Almost boring. Her car needed cleaning. She asked me to grab something from it while she was in the shower. That's how normal it still felt. Like I had permission to exist in her space without suspicion. I opened the passenger door expecting wrappers, receipts, the usual chaos of daily life. Instead, I found order hiding something messy. The items were still there. Tucked deeper now, like someone had tried to forget they existed but not quite managed it. The hotel key card again. A folded receipt from a place 2 towns over. 2 coffee cups from a cafe I had never been to with her. And then I saw the second set of fingerprints on the dashboard. Not literally obvious, but emotionally obvious. The kind of realization your brain completes before your logic catches up. My chest tightened in a way I can't fully describe. It wasn't panic yet. More like a slow collapse of certainty. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, not moving, just staring forward like if I didn't acknowledge it, it wouldn't become real. But it already was. After that, I started noticing everything. Not because things changed, but because I finally stopped ignoring them. Her phone buzzed differently when she got messages late at night. She angled it away more sharply. She smiled at texts she refused to show me. And when I asked casually who she was talking to, her answers became shorter, rehearsed. I did something I'm not proud of. I checked her routines. Her timings. The gaps in her schedule that didn't make sense. And the gaps were there. Clean, consistent, deliberate. Still, I wanted a harmless explanation more than I wanted the truth. I almost convinced myself she was planning a surprise, or dealing with something private, or just drifting. But deep down, I already knew the direction things were pointing. I just didn't want to be the kind of person who followed that path to its end. So I delayed. I told myself I needed more proof. As if reality needed permission to become real. And all the while, something in me was quietly preparing for impact. The revelation didn't arrive like a confession. It arrived like noise finally becoming a pattern. I checked the car again 2 days later. I don't even know what I expected. Hope and dread were doing this strange rotation in my chest. This time, there was a second hotel keycard. Different handwriting. Different room number. Same pattern. And a folded note. Not even dramatic. Just a time. A place. And initials that weren't mine. I remember sitting there for a full minute, completely still, like my body had forgotten how to respond. Then I laughed again. That same broken laugh from before. Except this time it turned into something else halfway through, something closer to choking. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was confirmation. Everything I had been avoiding thinking about suddenly had shape, weight, and direction. I didn't confront her immediately. I drove around for hours instead. Like movement could dilute meaning. Like if I stayed in motion long enough, the truth might fall out of my system. It didn't. I confronted her that night without planning how. That was my first mistake. She was cooking. Normal, domestic, almost peaceful. The kind of scene that makes betrayal feel even more surreal because nothing about the environment matches the conversation about to happen. I placed the items on the counter. No speech. No build-up. Just evidence. She froze for maybe 3 seconds. Then she sighed. Not shocked. Not confused. Just tired. That expression broke something in me before she even spoke. "What is this?" I asked, but it came out weaker than I intended. She wiped her hands slowly. Looked at me. Then at the items. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said. That sentence did more damage than denial would have. Because it wasn't. This didn't happen. It was. I knew it did. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might actually fall. And suddenly, I wasn't confronting a mystery anymore. I was confronting a decision she had already made. She didn't deny it. That was the strangest part. She sat down instead of continuing to cook, like we were switching from dinner preparation to a serious conversation about bills. She told me it started. Without meaning to. That phrase. I'll never forget it. Like betrayal has a default setting of accidental. She said she felt lonely. Unseen. That I was. There, but not present. She said someone at work listened to her in a way she hadn't felt in years. I remember interrupting her at one point, asking if that was supposed to justify it. She shook her head. "I'm not justifying it. I'm explaining it. There's a difference, apparently." She admitted it had been going on for months. Maybe longer. She couldn't even give a precise timeline, which somehow made it worse. Every sentence felt like a layer being peeled off something I didn't know was already dead. And yet part of me kept searching her face for hesitation. For regret that looked like mine. I didn't find it. The next few days were like living inside a delay. We were still in the same house, still performing normal life, but everything had shifted texture. Like walking on a floor that you now know is hollow. I couldn't sleep. When I did, I woke up angry at nothing specific. My brain kept replaying details I hadn't even noticed before, now reinterpreted as evidence. She tried to talk. I couldn't decide if it was damage control or genuine regret. I felt something I didn't expect: humiliation. Not just betrayal, but the realization that I had been living in a version of reality she had already left. And underneath that, something darker: self-doubt. Was I really absent? Was I really not enough? I hated that my mind even asked that question. But it did. There were moments I wanted to scream, and moments I wanted to beg her to make it simpler than it was. Instead, I just went quiet. Too quiet. And silence, I learned, can be its own form of collapse. We didn't tell anyone at first. That was another mistake. I thought privacy would protect what was left of my dignity. Instead, it just gave the situation more room to rot. But eventually, things leaked out. Friends noticed the distance. My family sensed something was wrong even before I said anything. When I finally told my brother, he didn't react the way I expected. No outrage. Just a long pause and a quiet, "Are you sure you want to stay there?" That question stayed with me longer than any advice. Her family got involved too. They didn't defend her outright, but there was an undercurrent of explanation. Stress. Miscommunication. Rough patch. Everyone seemed to be building frameworks around something I was still trying to understand in raw form. I stopped going out. Stopped answering messages quickly. Even simple interactions felt like they required me to perform a version of myself that wasn't cracking. And inside the house, we became two people orbiting the same silence, pretending not to collide. Work became the only place where I could function normally, and even that was fragile. I'd sit at my desk staring at screens without absorbing anything. People would talk to me and I'd respond automatically, like muscle memory taking over for a mind that was somewhere else. I started avoiding social situations completely. Not because I didn't want company, but because I couldn't stand the idea of pretending everything was fine. The worst part was realizing how ordinary betrayal looks from the outside. Nobody knows unless you tell them. You can be falling apart internally while still appearing like a functioning person externally. At night, I'd replay conversations in my head, searching for earlier versions of the truth I missed. I became obsessed with reconstructing the timeline. It didn't help. It never helps. The car stopped being just a car. It became a symbol I couldn't escape. Even driving past similar models made my stomach tighten. I felt like I had lost something fundamental, not just trust, but the ability to interpret my own life correctly. We tried, briefly, to fix it. Therapy. Conversations that stretched late into the night. Attempts at honesty that kept collapsing under their own weight. She ended things with the other person. Or said she did. I had no real way of verifying that without becoming someone I didn't want to be. For a short time, I almost believed we could rebuild something. But trust doesn't return in a straight line. It flickers. It hesitates. Every time she was late, my mind filled in gaps I couldn't unsee. Every message sound triggered a reflex I couldn't control. She noticed. Of course she noticed. One night she said, "I feel like I'm living under surveillance." And I remember replying, "And I feel like I'm living inside a lie I didn't agree to." Neither of us responded after that. That was the closest we got to clarity. After that, things started slowly unraveling again, but more quietly this time. There was more. Not a dramatic second betrayal, but smaller truths that kept surfacing. Half-truths about when things started. Inconsistencies in her explanations. Details she had forgotten, that later reappeared differently. I realized at some point that I might never get a complete version of the story. Only fragments, shaped by what she could bear to admit, and what I could bear to hear. That realization was worse than the original discovery. Because at least betrayal is a single event in theory. But ambiguity is ongoing. I started sleeping in another room. Not officially separated, just displaced. We spoke less. Not because of fights, but because every conversation felt like stepping on broken glass we both pretended wasn't there. And still, there were moments, brief, confusing moments, where I saw the person I thought I knew and felt an ache that made everything complicated again. That's the part one never know how to explain to anyone. It wasn't just hatred. It was grief mixed with memory. Eventually, we separated without a dramatic ending. No shouting match. No final confrontation. Just a mutual recognition that continuing was doing more damage than stopping. She moved out first. Quietly. Efficiently. Like someone leaving a life they had already emotionally exited months earlier. I helped carry boxes. That surprised me most, how functional I still was in the middle of something that felt catastrophic. When she left, she hugged me. I didn't hug back at first. Then I did. Briefly. Automatically. After the door closed, I sat on the floor for a long time and didn't move. People expect collapse to be loud. Mine wasn't. It was just absence. The house felt larger. Not emptier exactly, just unfamiliar. Every sound echoed differently. I kept expecting to feel relief. Instead, I mostly felt unfinished. Like the story hadn't fully resolved, even though the main character had already left. It's been long enough now that people assume I'm over it. I'm not sure what that means, honestly. I've rebuilt routines. I function. I laugh sometimes in ways that feel real. But there's a part of me that still checks things too carefully, that still notices patterns I wish I didn't. I don't hate her anymore. That faded in unpredictable waves. What's left is something more complicated, understanding mixed with residue. I still think about the car sometimes. Not the items themselves, but the moment before I understood them. That brief window where life was still intact and I didn't know it yet. If there's a lesson buried in all this, it's not clean enough to turn into advice. Trust isn't just about believing someone. It's about what you do when evidence starts speaking louder than belief. And I don't think I've fully forgiven myself for how long I needed to hear it. Some nights I still sit with that. Not trying to solve it anymore. Just remembering how easily everything shifted without warning, like it had been waiting for the right moment all along.